Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and today we are in the Meno. So we have come to a interesting discovery that Socrates is talking on a few different levels at the same time and specifically to us. Socrates is speaking to us, the reader, in a way that might be over the head of the character Meno, because he is talking about how do we apprehend the whole of the realm of being, what we might call an enlightenment experience, or the experience of oneness, or experiencing eternity itself, or experiencing consciousness itself. Lots of different ways that we can talk about it. The words that we use in philosophy are called the self-logos. So we talk about beauty itself, or self-beauty, self-justice, self-goodness, these sorts of words. It's also wholeness or self-whole, but it's a whole of all parts. So this is the language that we use to make sense of the experience, and it's also the language we use to reach the experience. That's the dialectic. This is what Socrates is teaching Meno. And without this dialectic, Meno hasn't been able to grasp or experience the realm of being, and so his education has been tragic. Because what can you do in an education if you are not experiencing what's true? You're dealing with opinions, personal beliefs, based on sense perceptions. We've seen that in Meno already. The examples of how to use the dialectic that Socrates has given, the ones that have been about being, Meno didn't really understand, he didn't really gel with. He liked the ones that were to do with the physical world and physical appearances. So we can see what happens when a person's education isn't about truth, isn't about being. And for a lot of people watching this is your education. Well, this is our education. This is the education of the society at the time of the recording of this episode. We are taught to look at physical things with our physical senses. We aren't taught how to understand understanding, the dialectic. We aren't taught how to understand being, dianoia, and true philosophy. We haven't been taught how to experience that. It's not part of our education. So we are educated to remain in the world of stupid opinions. I say stupid opinions because we live in the consequences of that world, and we can see what happens as a result. People being stupidly immature, irrational, harmful, genocidal, exploitative. The worst sorts of people are in power and are hurting each other, hurting human beings, hurting the planet, and they justify it by saying, well, that's just my opinion. Aren't we all entitled to our opinion? Well, my opinion is I should get all the stuff. My opinion is I should genocide the Palestinians. It's my opinion that my colored skin is the right colored skin, and I should get rid of all of the other colored skin people. Aren't we all entitled to our opinion? And if you disagree with me, hey, isn't that just your opinion? Who's to say what's right and wrong? We don't have a paradigm for truth. So this is the consequence of this kind of education that Meno has, and is the tradition we're in. Why? Because we haven't learnt from Socrates. So one of the questions that we ask when we study philosophical midwifery, which we have to be doing alongside the study of philosophy, one of the opening questions to chapter 1 was, why are we so irrational and immature when it comes to ourselves? Well, one way of answering that we can get from Meno, we have ignored Socrates. We have just dismissed somebody who is considered the greatest mind ever to walk the planet. By many people, he's called things like the father of Western thought. And there are sayings about Socrates, everything since Socrates is but a footnote to Socrates. Well, why are we not learning this? Why are we not reading it? And for the past 1500 years, why have all the translations been garbage? So that we can't read it. So these are questions that we can wonder about as we see the implications of Meno's way of being, while we ask ourselves, okay, let's do something different. So it's a good thing that Socrates is talking to us past Meno at the same time as also communicating to Meno. Now that's interesting, because if Socrates is a master of the Logos and he's helping us in our true education, which is mastering the Logos, then we can be learning about how the Logos also operates when we look at how Socrates operates. So if Socrates is able to communicate to the person he's talking with, Meno, and to other people listening who might be on a higher level, like us, I doubt Meno would ever subscribe to this kind of podcast. And each person is going to understand based on the level they are on. They're going to get questions based on the level they're on. They're going to be challenged based on the level they're on. At the same time simultaneously. If all people on different levels are being challenged in those kinds of ways at the same time, we're learning about how the Logos operates. So this universe, wouldn't you agree that everybody's at different levels of development, but the same world is somehow communicating to all of us based on where we're at? And this opens up this is a quote that I've heard from Pierre Grimes: "Mind communicates to all those who are open to it." So if there is this kind of communication appropriate to whatever level we're on, we want to be most open to it at the highest possible level. Now that's also how we've been learning to read, because we've recognized there are certain key words like good and altos or self that apply to multiple dimensions of being and multiple cognitive functions. So you can have beliefs about self and beliefs about what's good, and you can have understanding, you can have direct experience, and so on. So these are cognitive functions. So depending on what level of development you're at, that's going to be the level of cognitive functioning you're operating on. Are you someone who's moved by pretty shapes and colors like Meno? Are you operating at the level of opinions and beliefs? Or are you somebody who's reading this text and is interested in understanding? Or maybe you are interested in understanding the realm of nous, which is what we're doing here, which is a higher level, dianoia understanding, and so on. Now, this also applies to dimensions of reality. You can have an idea of self that we sometimes call the ego, an idea of self based on your opinions and beliefs based on physical experiences in the physical dimension of reality. But people who've had experience of the realm of being, one of the things they note is, oh, it's me, isn't it? And as a consequence, a lot of some of the problems caused by that lower identity of self are diminished a little bit. Our problems lessen for a while after an experience like that, because we wake up. That's what enlightenment means. We wake up and say, oh my goodness, I was this thing the whole time. I can't believe I thought I was that thing. But again, that's just the level of being. There are, of course, the level of the one self beyond that. So depending on what level of being and thinking you're on, the word good and self will apply to you. Now, we're reading in a certain way where, because we know that as a principle, we allow ourselves to get all of them. When offered many choices, hey, take all of them. In fact, that's what we do when we have a question. If we have a question, create many hypotheses. Carry many different solutions to that question and put them in your if sack, your hypothesis sack. Carry them with you and see what pans out. So too, if we're reading and we realize, oh, Socrates is talking on at least 3 levels, hey, why not see all 3 of them and carry all of them with us? Why limit yourself? No reason. So that's how we've been reading. So that's very interesting. So there's a communication going on in multiple levels that we can participate in if we want to. And if you're following along with this podcast, then good for you. You want to. So, this idea of multiple levels of communication to whoever. So Socrates isn't limited by time, of course. one of the qualities of the nature of being is it's eternal. So it does make sense that Socrates might be open to communicating to us through time. That might not be a limitation he has. Nevertheless, in terms of the content of the story, we can see that while he is communicating to Meno, who is very much in the physical world, very much governed by opinions, very much operating in the levels of beliefs, very unfamiliar with true understanding, very unfamiliar with the dialectic, very unfamiliar with the realm of being, there is a deeper level of communication going on to us, many of us here, who are familiar. Now, many of us are at the level of Meno. The idea of being and a non-physical experience of reality and self, these might be new ideas for you. If so, that's fantastic. Good thing we have this conversation with Meno, because Meno isn't just somebody operating at that level, which we have all been on, but he seems to be very good at it. He seems to be born into a family that's very rich, very well connected. He seems to be very good looking, and so he can throw his weight around, you might say, can get very attached to his false beliefs and opinions that are wrong, but tie him to his problems and his ignorance. So, as we've been saying, we have our own Meno moments, so we can recognize ourselves in Meno at times. And of course, there will be times when we are going to be more like Socrates, and there are going to be times where we are going to be beyond Socrates. That's that higher level Socrates is encouraging us to reach. And of course, that's the same as the Logos. The Logos, as that quote says, communicates to all who are open to it, and we might add to that based on your level of openness. So what does it mean to be open to the Logos? Well, we can wonder about that and look at how we've been reading. What does it mean to be open to reading in this kind of a way? Well, one thing we're seeing from the text is being open to the Logos is being okay with not knowing and being okay with being wrong. Two things that many people in our very sick world currently, at the time of recording, are not okay with. So again, the level of development of most human beings at the time of recording are very much Meno's level. People driven by false beliefs, personal opinions, physical senses, the kind of self that they are looking for are tied to their ego or their belief about themselves, their image of themselves, very much linked to their pathologos from childhood that they haven't learned how to address, and the kind of goodness that they seek and they want to become themselves are physical goods. Money, power, fame, wealth. That's the majority of the human population, and definitely those are the people who have risen to levels of office in our current world. So, very much our species is having a very big Meno moment right now. So how do we do better? Well, one thing we've realized is as Socrates is sharing an education, he's pointed out this is a different kind of education. He's pointed out to Meno his education has been garbage. Socrates hasn't used the word garbage, of course, but we can, because we don't have to worry about hurting Meno's feelings because we're not in a dialogue with him right now. Our education is garbage, in the same way Meno's is. And most people know this because it's built on a physical model. Education is just pouring physical things into the physical brain of physical people, and that will allow them to become physical cogs in a physical machine called capitalism that will make physical wealth for a few physical people who think that that's their physical good is the only good worth pursuing, while exploiting all the other physical people and destroying the physical species and the physical planet we live on. That's our education system right now. And I think most reflective people are kind of aware of that already. So what do we want to do instead? Well, Socrates is pointing out, hey, education has to involve this, knowing how to understand things. How do you define things? And so he's been giving us what we need to discover for ourselves the paradigm called the dialectic. Notice he hasn't handed it to us in a scientific textbook. The old model of learning, the piggy bank model. We are a piggy bank and educators drop coins in there. That would be the scientific textbook method. He hasn't given us a scientific textbook definition of the dialectic. He has, however, given us what we need to figure it out for ourselves, to play the game. Just like any hero's journey story. When Luke Skywalker meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, he doesn't say, hey, just sit there while I use the Force to push all your education and experiences and you defeating Darth Vader into your mind using my Force powers. That wouldn't be much of a movie. Equally so for video games. The video game developer does not give you the solution. He gives you what you need to discover the question and solve the puzzle. Socrates operates the same way, and we can create a hypothesis about the reality we're in. It seems that the Logos, the universe we're living in, operates in a similar way, giving us what we need to generate puzzles, which are usually seen as problems, but also at the same time giving us what we need through the Logos to solve those puzzles and get better, evolve, learn, grow. Now, there are a few caveats here. First of all, if you are not learning the language of the Logos, you're not going to get the clues to solve the puzzle. Doesn't matter how dearly you hold on to your stupid beliefs. And I say stupid beliefs because that's how they function, stupidly. It doesn't help you learn. It keeps you stupid, keeps you stuck in your ignorance. I have an Aunt Betty who has stupid beliefs that are racist. Doesn't help her learn. She won't like me calling them stupid, but it's true. So, we are a philosophy podcast. I'm sure, there are times when we might want to be more gentle in how we communicate if we were talking to Aunt Betty, but I think it's pretty evident from the implications of stupid, false, harmful opinions that they are in fact stupid. So, doesn't matter how loyal you are to your stupid beliefs, however racist or sexist or genocidal or religious they are, that's not going to help you. In fact, it's going to be the cause of your problems. What is? Learning the language. Just like anything else. You want to become a manic mechanic, you have to learn the language of automobiles. You want to be a pilot, you have to learn the language of aviation. You want to be a football player, you're going to have to learn what a tackle is, what an onside kick is, what a touchdown is, and so on. You need to learn the language. What's the language through which the self or the universe communicates to us to give us the clues that we need to solve our problems? It's the same language that Socrates is using to communicate with us here. It's the same language he is telling us to learn and master for ourselves. It's called the Logos. That's the language. And the structure and use of the Logos to come to definitions is the dialectic. So when Socrates says, hey, by the way, Meno, you want to know whether we can teach people virtue as though you know what it is. Do you want to give me a definition of virtue? Meno hasn't been able to. And if I was a betting man, I'd say if you stopped 10 people in the street, or if you talked to 10 of your teachers or 10 of your friends or 10 of your family members and say, hey, can you give a definition of virtue? I don't mean pointing to examples that you like or quoting poets who agree with your opinions. I mean an actual definition of what it is as a whole. I would bet that they would not be able to do it. And for good reason. Our education is the style of Meno's, which is why we still have the problems we have. we are rejecting and ignoring the Logos and Socrates, which is tragic. So theatrically tragic is how Socrates described Meno's crappy education, and that's where we are in right now, by rejecting Socrates. But here on the channel, we don't have to do that. We are fortunate to have a translation of the text where we're not being murdered by those people who are in power, which we would have been for the last 1,500 years or so. So, yay for that. And we have a Balboa translation with the actual ancient Greek, so we don't have to have faith in the people who are able to read the language. And thankfully, the translator has gone through the work of philosophical midwifery himself to discover certain false beliefs that would make his translation crappy, and has developed an understanding of philosophy himself so that he recognizes key terms of the self-logos himself. In other words, we can uncrappify our education and do better than what we've been doing. And of course, this isn't controversial. Famously, Socrates was murdered for talking in this way, challenging the official bollocks opinions of the people in charge. So, how do we do that? Well, we have to be, as we're saying, the Logos communicates to all those who are open to it. How do we be open to it? And how do we find the clues that will allow us to solve the puzzle in the video game of our life, or the hero's journey that is our life, the real one, the ideal or the self-hero's journey, not the way it's mythologized in Harry Potter or Star Wars or video games, but the actual one. That's what we're here for. We are on a hero's journey, the real one. Well, we've talked about pulling out key terms when we read, so we can, by learning about our reading, we're also learning about how to do that. If there are clues being sent to us through our experience, equally so, there are clues being sent to us through the text. Pulling out key terms, looking for self-logos terms. First of all, learning what those self-logos terms are: goodness, beauty, virtue. We've already learnt in our reading that the virtues of justice and courage and holiness are parts of a greater virtue, a whole of virtue. So we're learning the language, just like you might learn that a centre forward and a midfielder are parts of a whole you'd call a football team or a soccer team. So we're learning the language of not soccer, but the Logos, the self-logos. And of course, we have to, we want to use the paradigm as much as we can, what is called the dialectic, what has been referred to several times in the text, especially, and treat ourselves as a friend. Meno has said, hey, what if I'm what we would call today a bad faith actor? What if I said, hey, can you, because earlier in the text he said, can you give me a demonstration of this dialectic, the thing you need to do to understand, also the thing you need to do to come to a definition, because if you don't come to a wholeness, if you can't define the thing as a whole, how can you say you understand it? So Meno said, can you give me an example? And Socrates gave one on defining what shape is. And he used, what did he use? Color. And Meno said, hang on a second. What if I claimed, said, well, actually, that's a bad example, and it's a bad definition because I don't know what color means. Socrates says, then I would treat you as a bad actor. If there are, in order to develop the understanding, to come to a conclusion, we have to use the terms we have agreed upon. You have to build upon your what you have agreed together, you have understood. Now that would involve defining certain terms first, but terms that we can take for granted we both understand, like color. We don't have to go through the work of defining them if we already understand them. But if you are, this is a lot of a lot of people who support terribly, terribly unjust things, like taking away the rights to choose what to do with their own bodies from women. A lot of so right now at the time of recording, there was a election where Donald Trump appealed to the pathologos of the American population. Don't you want to oppress women? So right now, because he was elected, a lot of his supporters are mocking women. They're saying, your body, my choice. Because that was the whole premise behind this pro-life thing. It wasn't ever about life, because they didn't care about the life of the woman. They didn't care about the life of the actually born child. They didn't care about any sort of quality of life for the people being forced to give birth to a baby that they can't financially support. It was never about life. It was about pathologos. And of course it was. We're human beings. Unless we learn philosophical midwifery, we will be governed by the pathologos, which will lead us down the path to fate. Some more horribly than others. Like someone who personifies the most horrible kind of pathologos, Donald Trump, giving people license to embrace the absolute worst part of themselves. So, that's where we are at the time of recording. So, in one way kind of sad, but another way kind of a wake-up call for the need to actually learn the pathologos and learn the logos. But yeah, I got off on a bit of a tangent there, outlining the details of the motivation behind oppressing other people. So let's bring it back. I've actually forgotten what I started talking about, but to bring it back to what I do remember, we're talking about the significance of bad faith actors. Absolutely. So those people who I just described, who are showing their colors now that they feel they can get away with it, in order to support the fascism and the hypocrisy and the just disgustingness of their leader Trump, they will play that game, be a bad faith actor. They will ask, well, can you prove that women should be allowed to make decisions based on their own body and their own life? And people will make a very good proof, and then they will say, but I disagree because one of those terms I didn't agree with. I don't agree with what a baby is. I think a baby is a sperm, or life begins at conception. So they're bad faith actors. They're looking for ways of pretending they're ignorant so they can avoid a conclusion. Now, Meno said, what if I was like that? What if I was like these fascist grifters who try and use debate, not dialectic, debate tactics to find technicalities that are nothing about what I actually think and what I will actually do, but kind of like, I think philosophy is just bullshitting people with words. Isn't that what the media does? Isn't that what a lot of experts do? And Meno said, what if I was like that? And I said, well, actually, I disagree with what you've defined as shape because I don't actually agree with what color is. Socrates says, if you're a bad faith actor like that, I would say it's up to you to do the work using the logos to prove actually, let's find it in the text. Because this is a big deal, because one of the reasons why these grifters get away with their lying is because it's very easy to just say a whole bunch of lies. Like, if you want an example of somebody who does that for a living, Ben Shapiro, but also any of the American right-wing propaganda networks. And it's not just America, you'll find them in every country. They'll say 20 things that are lies that are very easy to say. And the person who tries to use reason has to spend a lot longer unraveling and unpacking those lies, which is a waste of time because they don't care. They've said it to their audience, and they are trying to appeal to the audience who don't care about reason. I've already told them the things that I want them to believe. So Meno says this: what if I was like that? And Socrates gives an answer that we would do well to use today. Here we go. So, here is the definition of what shape is as the conclusion of a lot of work following the Logos and the Dialectic. Shape is the only one of the truly existing beings which always happens to follow color. Are you happy now? Does that suffice for you? Or do you search in some other way? For if you were to speak about virtue in the same way I spoke about shape, I will be well pleased. So he's saying, hey, this is the conclusion. He's gone through the steps of the dialectic to come to a conclusion. The conclusion was shape is a ontos. It's a truly existing being. It's one of the aspects of reality that happens to always follow color. Now, in the dialectic, he said more about that. Of course, this is just the ending. And so now that I've given you the paradigm to use, the dialectic, can you use it to define what virtue is? And Meno says, no, you're simple-minded. Personal insult. Simple-minded answer of Socrates. Again, we can see it today. These people who are stuck in their problems, tied to the physical world only, their education has been garbage. They've been taught that the only thing in the world are just personal opinions, and to be fiercely loyal to the ones you grew up with. They tend to insult people when that conclusion is on the table. Especially if it's a conclusion that, hey, now that you've got a conclusion, you've also learned a new way of being, a way of using the logos and dialectic to actually define something, to actually understand. You can't play ignorant anymore. They don't like that. Meno doesn't like that. You're simple-minded. That's a simple-minded answer, Socrates. What do you mean, says Socrates? Because shape is in some way, according to your logos, notice, not the logos, that which always follows color. Again, that's just your opinion. It's not your logos, not the logos. He's trying to reframe it. But then if someone were to say that they did not know what color is, but we're in the same difficulty just as they were about shape, what do you think you would have answered? Depends what the meaning of is. That kind of crap. Debate tactics. The kind of crap they teach us at school. How to use weasel words and nonsense debate tactics to win the argument instead of discovering truth and learning. Socrates said, well, you know what I would say? I would say how I would answer them. I would answer them with the truth, as far as I'm concerned. If the questioner were indeed one of the what we call wise ones, as true today as it was back then, which are actually the heuristic and antagonistic kinds. The heuristic is people who use words for bullshittery, debating, debate bros, right-wing fascists, propagandists, and antagonistic. They're not interested in creating the conditions for understanding. They just want to start fights because that benefits their winning team. If we are fighting amongst ourselves, we won't ask the true questions about the nature of capitalism and how it is exploiting the majority of people in order that a very, very small group of people get to play out their vices and their injustices with impunity. We don't ask that question that we should ask every single day on every single news network. And every single day every single politician should be making a statement to the people to say what they are doing to address the problems of capitalism and create a transition from capitalism to a less unjust society. In other words, every day they should always be doing that. But they don't care about that. They call themselves wise. This is sarcastic, of course, because they use words to obfuscate. I never say that word right. To confuse the truth, and they also want to antagonize people. Interesting. Now, that's a fantastic definition. So Socrates sees people. He understands humanity. It's so clear to him that he can say, yeah, people in our world, human beings who call themselves wise, by the way, they have no clue what wisdom is. The word here is sophon, which is where philosophia comes from, in the same way that the people who call themselves philosophers are not philosophers. They're the opposite. Literally, they are philodoxias, lovers of opinions, because they don't know what wisdom is, but they're happy to call themselves wise. He sees it and it's obvious to him. And the two words he uses to describe their character, it's just so simple, so clear. Heuristic, use words to win arguments, and antagonistic, they just want to argue with people, cause fights. Which is what someone says, well, I don't actually know what color means, so you're garbage, Socrates. Right? Hey, by the way, it's happening right now at the time of this recording. We should be stopping the genocide that is happening against the Palestinian people and addressing the terrible, insidious false beliefs that are causing it, and learn. You know what people will say? Well, technically, I don't think it's a genocide. Let's spend the next 4 years debating using heuristics to debate whether technically it's officially a genocide or not, while it continues to happen. And if you disagree with me, I'll call you anti-Semitic. That's going to be quite antagonistic. That's it. And by the way, we get to do the genocide because we are the wiser species. They are savages. We are wise. Literally, these 3 words describe fascism, describe the nature of the human problems that we are suffering from right now. And Socrates just sees it, and he just says it. And it's just there. It's just there in black and white, and in Greek, and highlighted with blue and yellow. For all those who have a mind open to it. But hey, what have we seen? We've seen that if the Logos is telling us one thing, if we are human beings with false beliefs like Meno has, and spoiler alert, we all do, until we go through philosophical midwifery to completion, then we will have this reaction. We will say, no, that's a simple-minded answer. You can't use just 3 words to describe the nature of human problems. And how can you be so smart to say that? Who are you to say? Using heuristics and to be antagonistic. We will have this reaction to this simple statement in black and white of the Logos of the truth. So we have to learn how to deal with that. Otherwise, Socrates wouldn't have been murdered. Just told the truth. So, hopefully, we will put our Meno moments aside if we say, garbage, and actually get the benefit. By the way, one of the qualities of that counterattack to the Logos is certainty. So we've said there are two things we have to do. If the Logos communicates to all those who are open to it, we've been talking about the second thing, balloons, and learning the language or learning the Logos so that you can find the answer. But the first thing you need is to be in a state of mind where you're open to the question. To be open to the communication being sent to us through the Logos via the mind from self, you have to be open and curious. You have to be okay with not knowing. Now, these wise ones, inverted commas, that are actually heuristic and antagonistic, they think what it means to be wise is to act like they know everything. Certainty. And they are the most closed-minded. What we are learning is the exact opposite is self-virtue, aporia. Right at the beginning, Socrates says, I don't know what virtue is. Why does he say that? Because he knows far more than anybody else. What did Meno say? Look, I stand in need of knowing this. I don't happen to know what indeed self-excellence is, says Socrates. What does Meno say? He laughs at him. Ha 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 ha. Socrates, you don't know what virtue is? I'm going to go home and tell everyone this stuff about you. You don't know anything. Certainty. The idea of wisdom for those trapped in the level of ignorance, opinions, and beliefs based on physical sense perception is the physical appearance of what they think knowing is. Certainty. Close-mindedness, loyalty to false beliefs. They think that's what it means to be smart and wise. As true then as it is today. So the first thing Socrates says is, I don't know. Oh, by the way, after he was mocked, he said, you're right, I don't know. But up until now, haven't met anyone who knows. Didn't you meet my teacher when he was in Athens? I did indeed. So we've seen he's okay with not knowing. Number one, the opposite of certainty. And he is open-minded, or aporia. That's what we learnt last. That's what we read last. Aporia. Completely flummoxed. He's okay with not only not knowing, but with being puzzled. So okay with not knowing and open and curious. The two things that are taught to be the opposite of wisdom. Then and now. See how our education is backwards? It's literally the opposite of what is important and true. Anyway, these people who claim to be wise but don't have that, and so those are the two things we need to be open to the communication from through the Logos, via the dialectic, from mind, and ultimately from the self. Open-minded state of mind, okay with not knowing and being curious, and learning the language of the Logos. And our reading we've been doing this the whole time without even realizing it. We've been hunting for questions. We've been looking for things that stand out that we can generate questions from. We've been using metaphor, likenesses, analogies to generate new questions. We've been using our reading of philosophical midwifery, the dialectic on the pathologos, to generate questions about the Logos. So there's our open, curious, question-seeking puzzlement. And the other side, well, we've been learning the language of the Logos, finding the self-Logos key terms, pulling out the key terms, looking for the dialectical structure, trying our best to put those key terms within the dialectical structure. That's the paradigm of understanding he's been teaching us. So Socrates has been teaching us two things: the paradigm of the Logos, the understanding of the Logos, the language of the Logos, the dialectic, and he's been teaching us through his demonstration the other thing we need: aporia. Complete openness and curiosity, because Socrates says, hey, let's go back to page 8 later. Hey, you say that you're mad at me because I've made you stung, like a stingray stinging you, a flat-headed stingray you're calling me. Aporia. Well, you know what? If the stingray is himself self-benumbed, and it's through his own numbness, so the numbing is, he describes it as, hey, I've spoken many times about these things that I have just seen I know nothing about. Made many speeches in front of many, and they're very good speeches about virtue. Again, can't admit that he was wrong. But now both my soul and my mouth are numb, and I don't know what to say to answer you. And by the way, it must be magic, because it can't be that I'm ignorant. You just say, you're tricking me. You're a sorcerer. And they'll get you if you travel out of Athens. And Socrates says, hey, this benumbingness, being stung, puzzlement, doesn't come from me being abundant, having all the answers, being certain, but from being more puzzled than even you, by being all the more self-puzzled. Okay, so this is a key word, the word self. So we've been talking about the fact that the Logos and Socrates communicates to many different levels at the same time. When we see the word self, we have an opportunity to go into all of them. Take them all. Self-puzzle, what does that mean? Think about it. That can be something for you to think about. How can you be puzzled on all the different levels of reality? By being more self-puzzled, and in this way I make others puzzled. By the way, let's stop with this crying and get back to the question. Let's go back to what virtue is. Now, concerning virtue or excellence, what it is, I, on the one hand, don't know. See? Meno couldn't say that. He said, I can't answer you because you've stung me with your witchcraft, but I've made many good speeches about virtue to many people, and they still appear good. I still think I know. Socrates doing the opposite. I don't know. Hey, maybe you did before you touched me, but at least now you resemble one who doesn't know. Oh, thanks for the follow, Muachado. I hope you enjoy the stream. Hope you enjoyed the channel. You can find lots more of our episodes on YouTube. There's a link below. They're all free. Now at least you resemble one who doesn't know. Again, this is a big puzzle that we haven't been able to see in the text until now, because last time we read this section and actually, let's do it right now. We've been talking about how do we become open to learning, the aporia, so not from self-abundance here, but being super puzzled, and while being in that state of mind looking for questions to be puzzled about. So one of them is this: why does he say you resemble one who doesn't know? That sounds like Meno's language. Meno, stuck in the physical world, is the one who talks about appearances. Right here he said, hey, I've spoken countless times and made many speeches in front of many, and very good speeches about virtue, as they indeed appear to myself. Appearance. Meno's all about appearance. He doesn't know truth. He doesn't even know about the realm of being, it seems, let alone has mastered this open, curious state of mind along with the dialectic and logos to actually reach the realm of being, the realm of truth, and understand it. So why is Socrates using the word resemble, which is about appearance? That's a puzzle. That's a clue. It's like a good video game. There's a clue here. Why does this zombie have a police uniform on? Maybe he was one of the STARS members before. I don't know. Clues like that. Put your Sherlock Holmes hat on. So let's have a look at the translations we've had before this, like up until 10 years ago. Let's see what we were working with, and let's see if we could have even seen that puzzle. So using that video game analogy, one of the statues is missing is in the wrong place, so that the person who's playing the game has to move the statue to the right place to unlock the secret door. Now, that's this word resemble. Notice one word. It can hang on one word. That's the Logos. Sorry if I'm going off topic. Do you believe in the existence of Atlantis? I am not really interested in belief. I'm interested in understanding. I do know that Atlantis is mentioned in some of the Platonic dialogues, but that's not really my field. Why do you ask? What are you interested in about Atlantis? Let me think. What is it? Let me find the text. There's a Platonic text which the Atlantis is talked about. Platonic text talking about Atlantis. Oh, the Timaeus. Timaeus has a description of Atlantis. Oh, okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, are you on a hunt to discover more about Atlantis? So, ATD. What has drawn you into the world of Atlantis? Are you Atlantean? Have you done a 23andMe genetic test on your DNA and found out that you're 1/23rd Atlantean? So this is the text that we have been reading up until the Balboa translation. That's the theme song for the Balboa translation. So, perhaps you knew, so in the Balboa, perhaps you knew what virtue is before I touched you with my stingray and now you're stung, and that's the only reason why you can't give me a definition of what virtue is. It can't be because you don't know. Because, oh my God, isn't wise being cosplaying, pretending you know everything? So maybe you did know, but at least now you appear to be like one who does not know. Let's read it over here. So this is the translation we were working with before the Balboa, to show why awakening philosophy is literally only something we can be doing now. And there have been a few people who had to have mastered Greek themselves to be able to read at this level that we are able to do now. So we're very fortunate. And of course, only recently have we been allowed to have a copy of the text without getting murdered. Because it's heathen, it's against the official religions, the same reason they offed Socrates. And by the way, even the official religions, you couldn't have a book. You were just told what to do. Anyway, so for my part, says the past translation, I have no idea what virtue is, whilst you, though perhaps you may have known before you came in touch with me, are now as good as ignorant of it also. Nonetheless, I am willing to join you in examining it and inquiring into its nature. As good as ignorant of it? So that question that we have discovered in the text itself, which is part of learning, we haven't been able to discover because of the terrible translations we've been working with up until now. In the chatty chat, the question came to mind was whether it meant as an allegory an account of actual events. Oh, okay. What would be the implications of both? So that's a great question that you can use to exercise the dialectic, which is what we're here to learn. Side A would be what if Atlantis exists? And you can do the 4 categories: definition, demonstration, division, conclusion. And then side B of your dialectic can be what if Atlantis doesn't exist? Because that would be learning. That's the education that we're here to do. And it's the kind of education. So Socrates has been giving us examples of that way of thinking. And as we read, he applied it to shape and color so that we can apply it to being itself. So this thing about Atlantis can be a fun exercise that you can walk away with a skill that you can apply to virtue. Because the thing about applying the dialectic to aspects of being, or the eidos, formerly mistranslated as the Platonic forms, terrible mistranslation, by the way, great betrayal of philosophy. The significance of applying the dialectic to the eidos, the aspects of being, like virtue, is its meditation that way. You are engaging in sustained, focused concentration while looking for questions, while being open and curious in that aporia state of mind, while using the logos. It's the best conditions of your mind and your understanding, focused on being. Formally, that's the conditions for meditation, which is why we call it the paradigm or the archetype of true spirituality, and why the dialectic can open us up to nous, or true knowing. So if Socrates is saying, I don't know what virtue is, maybe he's saying, because I'm here talking to you. This isn't nous. I'm going to have a conversation with you, Meno, about your opinions. Who cares about your opinions? About what's good and bad. So right now, I'm not in a state of knowing. I'd recognize that as nous. So that's a possible hypothesis we can carry with us while we carry our question. Why is Socrates saying he doesn't know what virtue is? He seems to be able to talk a lot about it. So that, which is itself a demonstration of what we're defining as true learning. So back to page 8. How do we deal with people who are bad faith actors? Oh, and by the way, is Meno actually stung, or is he a bad faith actor? Is he just pretending that he's stung as an excuse to not being able to avoid admitting he doesn't know? So, back to this. So if you were one of those people who claim, oh, I don't even know what color means, so therefore I win by default. Checkmate, liberal. I'm going to drink your liberal tears. Ha 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 ha. Right, the same bullcrap that we see happening again as an example, because the election was just recently in America. These fascists who are trying to play out their pathologos and abuse women, because that's a very huge part of American belief systems and Christianity, blaming women for sin. Women are worth less than men. Women have only been able to vote very recently and, been able to have their own bank account. This abuse of women is very systemic. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. Anyway, until it does, it will continue to play itself out. Surprise, surprise. And those people are saying, well, actually, technically, I think I should decide what a woman should do with their body. Why? You're a racist, redneck, sexist idiot. Who cares what you... No, but I like pretending that I know. I like cosplaying as a wise one. I like being in charge. Let me tell you. And by the way, I'm a musician. So there are many times when people who are not able to play music think that the best thing they can do if they're inspired by my music is to play this game. Let me give you advice. Hang on a second. You want to tell me what I should do and you can't play music? By the way, when did you stop playing music? Do you want to pick it up again? Do you want to talk about what's preventing you from picking it up again? Or why you dropped it? Do you want to learn? I teach music. No. That's too much work. I want to be antagonistic and say that you suck, or you'll never win Australian Idol. Because that's what I think it means to be wise. To put people down. That's the fascist appeal. Give people another group to cosplay as knowing instead of actually learning the logos. Actual learning. Which is why philosophy is so hard to share. I've been in this game for a long time, and very few people are interested in actually learning. It's much more attractive to just pretend. Look at all of my lovely opinions and beliefs. Now we have the internet. I can find my corner of the internet where people already agree with my dumb opinions and beliefs, and they will nod in agreement when I pretend to be wise. And hey, if I get enough money, I can buy a whole media company, or media network, or television network, and just push my beliefs out there. And hey, if I get enough power, I can just genocide anybody who disagrees with me. And this is the implications of a world without logos. So you can put all of those implications inside B of a dialectic of if the logos exists. If it doesn't, like we're talking about with our friend in chat, if Atlantis doesn't exist, what follows? What are the stakes? What are the implications? What are the conclusions? Why would you care? Equally so, if the logos doesn't exist, if nobody awakens true philosophy, if nobody gets into this YouTube channel, why should we care? So all of those things I mentioned, terrible, tragic negatives, you can put inside B. It really highlights the stakes. And also for our souls, all of those things will be playing out within your soul as well. You'll be like Meno. You'll have that you'll have the conflict and the implications and the conclusions of playing out the implications of your false beliefs to the detriment of your soul and anyone you care about, whether you like it or not, which should give motivation to developing the virtues of courage and wisdom of actually learning the logos. I hope. I encourage. These videos are free. You can join the Discord for free. And I'm willing to take donations for better cameras and stuff if that would make it easier for you to play. So if you get one of these bad faith actors, people who claim to be wise because they're just ignorant and blindly loyal to their certainty and closed-mindedness, and instead, so that's their state of mind, and their use of words is heuristically to win debates. Oh, and so, yeah, so that's the whole women should have no choice. I'm going to use a debate. I don't care about the real-world implications because I just want to win a debate. Women should die in without any medical care and be forced to carry babies that they don't want to carry because, I know how to talk really fast in a debate. And I know how to get mad at anyone who disagrees with me. Heuristic and antagonistic. As true today as it was then. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't Socrates a wonder? What kind of state of mind would we say Socrates is in that he can see it all? And it's as true today as it is then. And he can use 3 words, 1 sarcastically and 2 positively. 1 negatively, so that would be side B of the dialectic, they're not actually wise. What if wisdom didn't exist, it was just personal opinions? And 2 inside B, they would be heuristic and antagonistic. Okay, something to wonder about as we read. I would say my answer has been stated. My answer is right. I've said it. But if I didn't state it correctly, it's your work to take up the Logos and refute me. I disagree because I have this opinion. This is something very common. If you've ever seen these debates with these bad faith actors, these fascists or right-wing grifters, they always say that. You'll make the rational person will make an argument and they'll say, well, I disagree with that. Well, I believe differently. I don't believe that. No. I've stated it correctly. My answer's been stated. If I didn't state it correctly, if it's wrong, not whether or not you believe it or agree, whether it's wrong, your job is to take up the Logos and refute me. You have to refute me. And you have to use the Logos. Don't appeal to beliefs and opinions. That doesn't mean anything. My Aunt Betty has crazy opinions about, I don't know. She's made up anyway. This is where my improv training should kick in. About fairies that speak to her about the Illuminati. Doesn't make it true. So you have to use the Logos. So this is Socrates' response to the same grifters that we face today. My answer has been stated, but if I didn't say it correctly, it's your work, you do the work to take up the Logos and refute me. Whereas, Meno, here is an invitation to be a different sort of person, different to your education. And it could have been an education 300 BC or it could be at 2024 AD. Here's an invitation to a different way of being. If we were friends, notice philo. So we've got Sophia here and we've got philo all within the same, like 5 lines, the same statement by Socrates. So potentially there's a question there. Is there something significant here in understanding philosophia, philosophy itself? Because here he's talking about what it means to be friends, philos, ones who you love, and what it means to be wise. Notice, when he says wise, he gives us the opposite. To be wise isn't heuristic or antagonistic, meaning he's saying, hey, by the way, this statue, it's not in the right place. Or this NPC character you've come across, he doesn't have the mysterious shield from his grandfather he needs to open the gates to get back to his castle. He doesn't have it. I'm showing you what it's not. It's not in his hands. You have to find it. That's how he writes. I guess that might be part of philosophy. That might be part of wisdom, because he said to Meno right at the start, you think wisdom is a habit of answering in a fearless and grand style. Pompous jerk, we would call them. Or Sigma Alpha Red Pill, poisoner of humanity today. As if one happens to know what is being asked. Sorry, let's read that again. Habit of answering in a fearless and grand style if one happens to know what is being asked. As if it befits one to know, inasmuch as he also avails self. Okay, that's enough. Yeah, no question about benefit. No question about true knowledge. Just a habit of answering in a certain way. Everyone on Fox News, pompous jerks, and not just Fox. I'm just using it because it's a cultural touchstone. In Australia, we have the same terrible people in charge of our networks. We have the same propaganda news networks on mainstream television. We have the same propaganda morning shows which ask the question so that later on at the end of the day on the exact same channel employed by the exact same person, they'll say, people are saying this terrible thing about immigrants. No. Your people said it on the morning show. You're just repeating it at the end of the day and saying, oh, but it's people are saying it. So it's easier to say, point to the American thing because it's on TV and it's, a big, significant cultural force and military force and political force. People are saying immigrants are eating cats and dogs. No, you said it. You said it. No, but all I can do is just, wonder about it. People are saying, no, they're saying it because you said it. Manufactured consent. So what? We need to recognize this within our own soul. And we are wondering what it truly means to be wise. Is it this fearless and grand style of bullshitting, confidently, loudly yelling, without any question about whether or not it benefits? Does it benefit people to lie to them? So this was something that Socrates said straight away. I recognize what you think wisdom is. So it's not that, by the way. I don't think that's much of a spoiler. Okay, so what is wisdom? And it's not the significance of that habit, a heuristic and antagonistic kind. So Socrates isn't giving us the answer. He's not doing the piggy bank textbook model. He's not fearlessly and confidently answering any question. He's given us the opposite. He said, hey, by the way, you know what's important? Wisdom. I'll tell you what it isn't. Heuristic and antagonistic. You know what else is important? Friendship. By the way, I'm not even going to give you the question. I'm going to use the word sophon and philia within the same within two sentences. And if you know enough about philosophy to know that these are the two parts of the word philosophy, philos, sophia, it will stick out for you. It should stick out. If you're reading with this kind of level of curiosity and open-mindedness and aporia, and you're looking for key terms, self-logos terms, and structure, the structure of the text. So there's our open, curious, aporia state of mind, wondering, looking for questions state of mind, and there's our looking for clues using the Logos and Dialectic. That's the game. If you are doing that, you will see, philosophia, there's something significant. Just like a video game. Or there's something significant about that treasure chest. It's moving differently, or it's in a special place, or if you don't know how to recognize treasure chests, you might not see it. So what was our quote for today? Mind communicates to us and for our benefit through the Logos to all those who are open to it. This is about being open to it. The exact opposite of heuristic and antagonistic. Different way of understanding wisdom. It's not a debate bro thing. And it might be what we need to solve our problems. So, puzzle, philosophia, wisdom and friendship. So what does it mean to be wise? We can have that as a question. We know that heuristic and antagonistic is going inside B. The more we read the text, we can develop a dialectic of like this. So again, I just given what I said, I shouldn't be doing it. for you, but I can give you a start. What is wisdom? And we have what is friendship? And because we have the internet and we have the Balboa translation, we are not being gate-kept by all of the authority figures who have controlled our ability to, or gate-kept or restricted our ability to learn for the last 2,500 years. We can put underneath it the Greek. Sophia. And as we read, because there are different variations of the word, we can actually write this is the S in the Greek, and the O is just an O. Let's do it under here. S, O. This is the PH one. And now, in the text it was O and then N, sophon. But this is the key part here. So let's highlight this. So look for that. And friendship is the PH again. Oh, it's PHILOI, which is, there's our PH. This is the I, this is the L. We know that because we always see it with the logos, and the O, which has always followed the word logos as well, and the I. There we go. So, discovered a question. What else do we do? You can do like this, and then you do this. There's two questions, but within those two questions, you have two parts. If it is, if it exists, so there's our, say if it exists, that's side A, and if it does not exist, if not exists, that's side B. Equally so, over here, what is friendship? Is friendship just something like Meno says? Meno says, hey, friendship is being good to your friends and harming your enemies. And how did Meno define the good? Was it helping people develop that open, aporia, curious, question-seeking state of consciousness, while at the same time helping them learn the art of the Logos and Dialectic, to learn the language of the Logos to solve the questions? Was that being good to his friends? Let's see. Socrates says, hey, do you call good things like health and wealth? Meno says, well, actually, I include gold and silver and honors and offices. Gold and silver, desires, physical desires. Philokrimatos, honor and offices, fame. Philotimos. Two kinds of philos, two kinds of love or friendship that are negative. Do you mean good things, nothing else than those things? Yeah, I actually mean nothing else than these. So, spoiler alert, that's going to be... What is friendship? If it's not something that exists, and exists means being. Exists means being. So you know what doesn't exist in being? Gold and silver. And honors and offices. Fame and privilege. These don't exist. You can't take them with you when you die. These are physical things. And we can recognize it because we recognize the philos. One is philo, not philosophia, but crematos, love of cremated tomatoes, ashes, things you can't take with you, physical wealth. That's what philocrematos means. Honors and offices, philotimos, like a timocratic soul. Timos is the love of honor, fame, right? Hey, what happens when the rich people get enough stuff to be rich? They buy Twitter, so everyone listens to them. They go on TV. What does Donald Trump, who's got the money? Apparently, maybe. What does he do? He wants to be famous. He always talks about his ratings. He doesn't talk about anything political. He likes the ratings. He likes his crowd sizes. Because he has this, now he goes for this. He wants to be honored. The worst kind of a soul. Which follows if you have Meno's education. Philo, or the love or friendship of Timos. Timos is I don't know. How would you remember Timos? A small man named Tim who likes the army. So he likes honor and officers. I don't know. You can think of a mnemonic device, which is part of it. So we've got A and B over here. And you can see it also as a triad. So this is, if it doesn't exist, it's this. Friendship doesn't exist. But you can also understand this as a triad. A, B, and C. C is mnemonic devices. Mythology. How do you remember Philotimos? How do you remember Philokrematos? Visualization. Images. You have to create. So as you do this, you've got side A, what is, side B, what isn't, but you are imagining or visualizing what true friendship really is. That's the triad. Now, taken to its ultimate, the self, you can say the complete spiritual tradition or the complete intellectual tradition or the complete education and nurture we're here to do, the true education, has three parts. The self-logos, which is the logos or the self. The two most significant terms, pick one. If it exists, that's the logos that we learn by reading the Balboa version of Plato. And if the logos doesn't exist, that's our pathologos, the cause of our false beliefs. So the self-logos, the pathologos, and also how do we imagine them? So you can say mnemonic devices, mnemonic or image creation, imagination, or visualization. So self-logos is philosophy, pathologos is philosophical midwifery, and imagination or visualization or mnemonic devices, that's mythology. So there's the triad of what we can understand as truth education. So we've also got, so this is if we want to know what friendship is, we want to know what Sophia is. Why? Because that statue seemed to be out of place. There was something mysterious about this part of the text. Okay, so this is, notice, Meno gives us a lot about what it isn't. So, good things. So again, we talked about how Meno's problem is he's in the physical world of opinions and sense perception. The theatrically tragic problem of his education. So when Socrates says, you know what are the good things that we need to acquire to be virtuous? Just, money and fame. That's it. Oh, Meno. How come Meno got to talk to Socrates and not me? Well, good for us, because that's where we start as human beings. You have to see through this, see that you can't take it with you, see that the people who have all the gold and silver, the Elon Musks, the Donald Trumps, the Jeff Bezoses, they are the worst people. This doesn't seem to help you. Now, that's not to say that, being poor is good either. But there's got to be something more. Honors and offices, same thing. Is fame where it's at? So, back to where we were. What is true philosophy? What is wisdom? What is friendship? You know what wisdom isn't? Heuristic and antagonistic. So again, he's not telling us what it is. Is that part of learning? Notice, when Meno started to find out that he was wrong, here, theatrically tragic education, he left before the mysteries and he remained uninitiated into the realm of being. Oh wait, back here I think it was. Yeah, he said, hey, give me the answers. Socrates says, that's what spoiled people do. That's tyrannical. Demanding the answers. You are overbearing, Meno, for you task an old man with demands for answers. So notice, we're not getting answers, we're getting the opposite. Heuristic, so what is wisdom? Well, we're not getting the answer, we're getting the opposite. Heuristic and antagonistic. So, this kind of learning is the opposite of tyrannical. So it's not, how do you spell that? Heuristic and antagonistic. Debate bros. Click farmers. Drama lovers. Not heuristic and antagonistic. Also, we read, not wisdom isn't demanding or giving answers, which he describes, we just read it, as tyrannical. So there's a kind of tyranny to the soul by learning in this way. So what? So we are not getting answers, but so long as we are using the dialectic, we have a way of solving the puzzles. We are being the opposite of Meno. So maybe Meno's certain state of mind. His, what was the word? Fearless. So notice I'm pulling the words directly out of the text. So I'm not adding things that aren't there or leaving out things that are. That's called interpretation. Fearless and grand style. So yeah, answering in a fearless and grand style. So we can put that in. Welcome back to the chat. So we could say demanding answers. Whoops. Demanding answers is tyrannical. Like a spoiled rich kid. But also giving answers in a fearless, fearless and grand style. We would call them pompous jackasses, grifters. Fearless and grand. Hey, preachers, right? Not your religion, but the thousands of other religions that you can see are grifting all of their patrons, scamming their money. What do? They're idiots. Obviously, they're ignorant. Idiot might be a bit harsh. There are people who don't know anything about finances or relationships. They haven't studied it. They're not experts on any of it, but because they're on stage in front of on a pulpit, they say, hey, let me tell you how to do your finances. Jesus wants that, or Muhammad wants that, or Joseph Smith wants that. Let me tell you how to have your relationships. Fearless, and it's all style. It's all style. Those of you who are familiar with comedy, yes, the gospel of prosperity, for example, absolutely. They don't know anything about this stuff. They don't know. They're not an economist, but they'll tell you, well, actually, if you give me money, it's going to be good for your finances because Jesus says so. Now, if you're a fan of comedy, you might know a guy who passed away recently called Norm Macdonald. He talks about how there are kind of two aspects to comedy. There's style and there's substance. There are some comedians who are all style. They just have a fearless and grand style, and they just sound like they're saying funny things. And then there's someone like Norm Macdonald who says, I'm the opposite. I have the substance, but I tour with people who are good at having the style. Fearless and grand style without any substance is what Meno thinks it means to be wise, is what the right-wingers and these preachers and these evangelists and these propagandists think it means to be wise. And I don't mean your one's the right one. I mean everyone else's. So don't suspect I'm talking about your particular preacher or news anchor or whoever. And of course, it's not everyone and it's not all the time. If we were stuck in our problem all the time, we wouldn't be able to get out of it. But it's important to catch ourselves when we are in this state of being, when we're having our Meno moments. We think to be right, it's just and virtue and excellent when we have all the right answers, when we put on this big mask and we act like we know and we shut people down and we demand answers instead of looking for questions. Hey, philosopher, tell me what you think about X. No. How about I help you gain questions? How about I teach you how to read, how to play the game, how to be open and curious, be okay with not knowing, how to leverage that not knowing into wonder and curiosity, how to leverage that into discovering questions by looking for the logos and dialectic structure, and how to look for the logos and dialectic to answer those questions. What I just said, you could put over here. But I'm not going to do side A. Why? Because that would be giving answers. That would be unwise of me. But I can point to the structure that you can use to do it for yourself. So we discovered a question because Sophia and Philoi were right together. Coincidence? Philosophy? Oh, if we are reading the text with this level of integrity, we've discovered a question that you wouldn't be able to see if you didn't have the Balboa. Because you wouldn't recognize the words. You wouldn't recognize the Greek. So again, we can awaken philosophy, which is the name of the channel, which is really exciting when we say the name of the channel. Just like when John Diehard says, "It's time to die hard," and everyone in the audience goes, because it's the name of the movie. And by the way, is there a connection between this and this? Because what Socrates is saying, hey, by the way, if you were a bad faith actor, if you are one of these heuristic and antagonistic kinds, I would say, I've given you my answer. If you disagree, it's up to you to use the logos to correct me, to show where I got it wrong. But if you are a friend, that's what we're reading now. What would follow? So what we're going to read now would probably, I wouldn't do it because that would be bad. That would be unvirtuous. But what we're going to read next is if you were a friend. So what we read about that Socrates is going to say, we can put in here to discover what friendship is, because these two things we can put together to understand what philosophy is. And what it isn't, which is important because we're human beings, meaning we have problems and we have to discover wisdom. We have to address our fate, purify our fate through philosophical midwifery, and perfect our excellence. And by the way, help others. Which means when you understand something, you better also be understanding what it isn't as well as what it is. Just like if you're a doctor, what is a healthy body? What's a sick body? What's a well-functioning car? What's a car with a broken gasket sound like? Mastership. And then you can use it to benefit, which is also part of having an art. The art of the logos. Let's check in with Chatty Chat. But even if certain teachings are flawed, isn't there still some truth within the doctrine? Why? If my crazy Aunt Betty said 10 racist things, do I have to save it by trying to compromise? Okay, I'm going to believe 5 of those racist things. That's compromise. You don't want to compromise with what isn't. Would that be virtue? Compromise? I'm only going to kick 4 puppies today instead of my usual 8. But that makes me a good person. For example, when I read the Bible, I found myself questioning the reasonings of those who wrote it. That sounds like something you were doing. Unless, of course, the Bible says, always question everything written in this book. Never just believe it. Never just have faith. Always question. Nothing in this book is gospel. If that was part of the book, then maybe you've read something good. But it sounds like you questioning is something you were doing and nothing to do with the book. Unless, of course, the book says, hey, don't take anything here as gospel, the way Socrates talks. Oh, actually, did they ever say that? Or do they use that word to name? Do they literally call it the gospel? There are also things I learned that I hadn't encountered anywhere else. Valuable ideas, like how we are all sinners. Oh my God. No, that's bullshit. Okay, we've just been reasoning about how it's bad to just give answers in a fearless and grand style. But I'm gonna give you one. We are not all sinners. That's a bullshit, made up nonsense based on nothing in order to get you to feel guilty about yourself. In philosophy, see, here's the thing. We are reading in the Meno that part of virtue is realizing you don't know what virtue is. How can we do this if we think, oh no, I already know what wisdom is? It's about grandstanding and passing off your beliefs. You will never do this exercise. You'll be stuck in your problem. Same thing, I know what friendship is. It's giving gold and silver to the people that you think are pretty. You'll never do this exercise. You will never read. You'll never learn. You have to admit you don't know and be okay with not knowing, and then take that not knowing and turn it into wonder and questions. Now, if that's a principle in philosophy, one of the aspects of the dialectic is to push the implication, keep going to a conclusion. So if we saw this principle, be okay with not knowing so that we can learn, push that to the highest. What's the highest that could go? What's the highest term that there is in philosophy and otherwise? The self. In other words, you don't know what the self is. So how dare you say that you're a sinner? You don't know what the self is. We are literally doing philosophy, which is learning what is not wisdom, but what is the self. What if it exists and what if it doesn't exist? The self is beyond even being. So all of the self-logos terms that apply to being, goodness itself, eternity itself, wisdom itself, the self is greater even than that. So you can't rationally and maturely say that you are a sinner. It's against truth. But it is a very, very good representation of what if the self doesn't exist. Because it's a negative belief. By the way, it's a belief. You don't know it. We just been through that. It's a negative belief about yourself that limits you from participating in actually learning what the self is. So we have what we call an inner critic, or what the Greeks call a kakadaimon, a bad inner voice that says, you stink, you'll never understand, you're just a sinner, nobody likes you. Now, all of those things are not true. All of those things that diminish the self or diminish reality or mind are literally things that we take notes of so that we can do this. We put it inside B. So we go over here. So you can say this is our learning. This is our learning. Okay, so what's our ultimate goal? So again, we start with a question. Get a question. What is the self? Now, what have we learned about the dialectic? There are two halves, two parts to it. If self exists, now the word exists means being. So everything that we learn about being, goodness, justice, beauty itself applies to the self over here, if self exists. But also we have to do, what if the self doesn't exist? What if you are innately evil because some guy with a funny hat who wanted to oppress you and take all your stuff while raping people wanted you to believe that you're a sinner, because that will allow him to play out his false beliefs and his tyranny? If self does, what if he was right? The very people who would murder you for doing philosophy for 1500 years, the very people who killed the philosophers in the beginning of the Dark Ages, the very people who said you couldn't even read a text for yourself, what if they were right? Even though everything they did was terrible and wrong, what if they were right about the self and it does not exist? That's side B. Now, to be in the game, you have to be doing both, because you can't have what's true while also holding on to what's false. So formally we call this, so this is what we do in philosophy by the Logos and Dialectic. Over here, so all of those thoughts that say that you suck or you're a sinner, all those sorts of things are not about the self. They're inside here. They are clues for philosophical midwifery, which is about the pathologos, the false or sick beliefs, pathologos. But also, you use the dialectic, because the dialectic is the structure of the logos. You can apply the same structure to what is and what isn't, what's true or what's false. So, you could say, well, isn't that a terrible universe? Doesn't it prove my pathologos right to say that I stink and reality hates me? Why else would I be getting all of these inner thoughts that tell me I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I need to set my goals lower, or God doesn't like me, or there's such a thing as evil or sin? Shouldn't that be proof of? No. Because we have just been learning that if reality was just, it wouldn't give you the answers. Like Socrates, because if the reality was giving you the answers, just telling you everything true about yourself, it would be tyrannical, heuristic, and antagonistic, giving answers in a fearless and grand style. That wouldn't be wisdom. If your reality was just only giving you everything true, it wouldn't be wisdom, and it wouldn't be true friendship. But what it is giving you is what we are seeing here. Terms that can go here, that you have to, by the way, you have to be playing. You can't demand answers like a rich kid, like Meno, a tyrant, like a Trump. You have to take notes of all of those things that stand out. You know what? I really feel like I stink. I really feel like I'm a sinner. I really feel like I'm not as good as women. Put them, you have to do this. It's an activity, it's a game, it's fun, it's the best game in town. Because those terms go inside B so that you get clues about, number one, the cause of these terms. That's the dialectic. What's the definition? This is what Socrates wants Meno to give, a definition of virtue, not all of its terms. You start with the terms and you apply the dialectic to get the definition. You're also, everything you see in here, you can create a question about what would be the truth over here. So if you're in it, if the kakadaemon, the negative voice that lies to you about yourself to keep your problems alive, is saying that you are less than God because you're a sinner, what would be the truth maybe? Make that a question. What would be the opposite of that? That's a question. Because there's a structure to this. Just like what we're learning here in reading. So what we're learning in reading is something we can always do. It's a way of being. It's a new way of being that Socrates is inviting us to play in, participate in with him. So, if friendship isn't really loving gold and silver, what would be the opposite? If it isn't loving fame, honors, and offices, what would be the opposite? If wisdom isn't using words to be heuristic and antagonistic, what would be the opposite use of words? If it wasn't demanding answers, what would be the opposite? If it wasn't giving answers in a fearless and grand style, what would be its opposite? And because I'm not giving you answers right now, I'm not going to do this. But I'm telling you, I'm showing you the structure that you can use if you choose to play.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
And Socrates is saying this is true learning. This is the only way you're going to get to a definition. This is the only way you're going to get to understanding. And it's the only way you're going to get initiated into the mystical experience of true being, because true being exists. You have to recognize the false beliefs you're carrying about self and reality that's inconsistent with you reaching being, because the experience of being is oneness. You unite with it. It's mind minding mind. It's consciousness in consciousness. It's a oneness. So you can't simultaneously hold the belief that you're a sinner if you realize the mind that you have is God, the divine, eternity, pure wisdom. You can't have both. Just like you can't be a vet and also keep hold of the childish belief that kittens come from when dogs and cats marry each other. That's not where kittens come from. You can't have both. That's why you need to be given the false beliefs that you are carrying by your mind, encouraging you to reflect on them, but it's not true. Equally so, we have to have our nose in a... So, by the way, that's philosophical midwifery, addressing what doesn't exist about the self. Reading the Balboa version of Socrates gives us the Logos, what is true. So that's an activity of learning which, as you do it, you are keeping your mind focused, a single-minded focus, and you're imagining it on being, because being is what exists. The non-physical dimension of reality that always exists, eternity, that can be experienced as oneness or enlightenment or mind-minding mind. Nous is the Greek word. So you are, by doing this, you are not demanding answers. You are developing a sort of curiosity and wonder. You're also learning to master your own mind, because this is the dialectic, the structure of mind, the structure of thinking. You are becoming aware of what's false so you can recognize it. And if you're using the dialectic, you can recognize even its cause. It's the original false definition of yourself, where all the other things follow, you being a sinner, you being ugly, no one liking you, all these things follow the first definition. That will free you from it. So you're gaining a mastery of understanding of what's false, so you cannot be a slave to it, and also of what's true. So when you have this experience of nous, you can recognize it. Oh, I know you. That's me. Well, that's my mind. That's eternity. That's wisdom. Oh, I can see justice in the corner. I can see beauty over there. Whereas people who don't have a language, it's like seeing a rugby game. If you've ever seen a rugby game for like a minute, if someone said, hey, here's a minute of a rugby game, you don't have a language, you don't know what a tackle is or a scrum is or what a try is, you would think rugby is the scariest, most violent thing in the world. You would hate it. If you just saw a glimpse of it, you saw like 5 seconds of a maul or something. But if you knew what a maul was, you would have the language to recognize it, make sense of it, and benefit from it, and have fun. Have fun watching the game, but also you can see a good football game and become better at football yourself. The same thing with the Logos, but applied to self. That's why we're doing this in Meno. We're learning how to learn. We're learning what virtue is. We're learning the dialectic and Logos. And that's why half of the time on the channel we do philosophical midwifery, which is if the self does not exist. Socrates calls this purification. Purification of what's false, and philosophy, perfection. It's like going to a doctor. You go to a doctor to get rid of your sickness, but then you're not healthy yet. You have to do some personal training. So back in the chatty chat. If someone kills once, they become a murderer. Whoa. If someone sins, they become sinful. So the word sin is is a mistranslation, as we've been talking about today. A lot of mistranslations in text, especially the text you'd be murdered if you read yourself, especially if it was written in a language you could read. Oh my goodness. That's how goddamn tyrannical history has been for us being able to think for ourselves and actually read the text for ourselves. That's significant, especially because the Balboa text we've only had this for about 5 to 10 years. We haven't been able to do philosophy until very recently. It's important to acknowledge. Anyway, so the word sin is a mistranslation of the Greek word amartia, which literally means missing the mark. It's an archery term. So if you're doing archery and you aim at the bullseye and you miss the mark, they hold up like a white flag and they say, you missed the mark. You have to correct your aim and shoot again. You don't say, oh no, I'm a sinner. I missed the mark. My arrow didn't hit the first time. I must have the devil in my soul. Bollocks. That's a mistranslation caused by a pathologos from the translators. It's just not in the Greek. It's not there. But if you think about the domination, authority, hierarchical structures that want to convince you, you get nothing, we get everything, we get to read the books, we get all the money, we get all the land, we get to murder whoever we want, we get to rape whoever we want, you can't say anything. People will say, hang on a second, what's the logos? What's the understanding principle of reality that says that that is something that is real? They will say, shut up, you're a sinner. It's a way of silencing the logos by making you hate yourself. And it isn't even in the Greek. It's not in there. The word is amartia, which means missing the mark. So I hope that helps. Yeah, humility is another word. Be humble. What's that mean? By the way, are these people who have all the money and all the honor and the fame and the gold and the silver, are they humble? No, it's just nonsense. Don't be humble, be yourself. Be excellent. That's what we're reading. We're reading the Meno. The Meno isn't, how can you be an average self? How can you be one of the lowly peasants? No, it's excellence. Virtue literally means the excellence of yourself. What's the best you can be? We don't want humble muchachos. We don't want humble muchachos in the world. We want excellent people. We want people like Socrates who can master the art of the logos and use it to help other people, help everyone else, help humanity, introduce the logos and an understanding of the pathologos, so we can purify ourselves from our problems and escape the terrible consequences of fate. If you keep the problems that you got from childhood, you are fated to the negative conclusions and find your destiny. We want to reach our destiny, which is to know and show the self with excellence or virtue. And art, the art of the logos. So you can take your humility and shove it. Don't want any humble yous. We want the best yous. We want the most excellent yous. We want the yous that are in your destiny. Love philosophy. Encourage others to do philosophy. Master the art of the logos. Can practice and use the dialectic like Socrates is. The perfection. And by the way, you have to find out what draws you to people who tell you to put yourself down. You have to do that too. Every human being gets a problem. It's called a pathologos. Just as we are seeing, the dialectic has two halves. So we've been over here. What is wisdom? You have to do what it is and what it isn't. Otherwise, you don't have complete understanding. And you don't have the structure to find the questions and come up with the answers yourself. If that's a principle that's always true of the dialectic, And we are here to learn as human beings. What else could we be here for? We can't take our gold and silver with us. We can't take our fame and jobs with us, our offices with us. Can't take our Instagram followers with us after this physical life. You can't take your Bugattis and dollars with you. Then what are we here for? What else is left? Learning. Philomathesis, lover of learning. So if we're here to learn, and learning is the dialectic, then we have to come into this world having forgotten the true nature of the self, so we can learn what it means to be learning this. But also we have to be given a false belief about the self that isn't real, doesn't exist. It's an illusion that most people spend their lives becoming most like, identifying with. Becomes their mask, becomes their way of being, becomes the way they hold themselves, becomes the people they're attracted to, the people they listen to. Until eventually it becomes their identity. They think that they are this. But we need that so that we can master this. Otherwise, we're not really learning, are we? Can't humility be a step towards achieving self-mastery? I'm thinking of Buddha, for example. Well, so what does the Buddha lack? The Logos. That's why philosophy is the paradigm or the archetype of spirituality. So if this is learning, you can say, well, some traditions can have the imagination. They can imagine the Atman, the true self that exists. So they've had a part of it, but they don't have a mastery of the Logos. They can't use it with the dialectic. So whenever you say, hey, what is the true self? They'll say, oh, just shut up and sit on the mat. So all traditions take parts of this. Buddhism might take this part, but doesn't have the Logos. There are some traditions that have koans or encourage you to have questions. But again, they don't have the structure of the dialectic. It's just, they're trick questions. What is the sound of one hand clapping? We don't need trick questions. Would you say that his conclusion that suffering lies in attachment comes from the Logos that he perceived? No. I wouldn't. I mean, unless he can show it with the dialectic, which is the use of the Logos. Otherwise, what, am I supposed to believe him? The thing about beliefs is it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. You either got them when you were young and you believed in authority figures and it's something your parents said to yourself because you were stuck with them and you're dependent on them. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything to you. Oh, I mean, it does if it challenges your personal beliefs. Like if you grew up racist and somebody said, well, I believe people are equal, then you might care because you might want to fight that person. Other than that, who cares about beliefs? Meno does. But what do we care about? Understanding. Understanding is a different cognitive function. Understanding requires the Logos. Understanding is something about being. It always is. It's a true principle forever, for always. Which means everyone can play. You don't have to be born Jewish or born Catholic or born Anglican and happen to be, because if you're not born into those religions, you don't get them later. Because faith is an absurd belief. It's to believe things without any evidence. There can't be evidence. That's why it's an absurd belief. You can't prove Mary was a virgin. It's not possible. And often the things you are told you must believe are disproven by evidence. So you are told to be blind to your own self. Like dinosaurs don't exist, or the world was only 5,000 years old, or men are better than women. So what are we interested in? Understanding. Understanding is about what's eternal. It's with the Logos. You can use it with the dialectic. It perfects your soul and it allows you to reach your highest goals, your destiny. And you can also use it to get rid of your problems. In other words, not only do you understand it, you can verify your understanding in direct experience. None of that's available for belief. The problem lies in the chat. I'm reading the chat. The problem lies in what one considers knowledge, what others considers it faith. Yes. Yeah. So we're reading. So one of the questions is, what is wisdom? We could ask, what is knowledge? Meno thinks it's giving answers in a fearless and grand style. He thinks it's opinions based on his family and his privilege in life. He also tried to give an understanding of virtue by quoting a poet who already agreed with his opinions. So what we do in philosophy is understand what is knowledge and what isn't it. So you could do the same thing. So I encourage you to do this. Find a notepad or program that you like and do that. Put at the top your question. Notice it starts with a question. It doesn't start with a belief you are insisted you must learn otherwise and you must agree with, otherwise you burn in hell. You nasty little boy, you sinner. It doesn't start like that. It starts with a question. Your question is, what is knowledge? Because it's your question because you've noticed the problem lies in good. You've recognized the problem. That's part of the game. Like when you're playing a video game, you're walking down a hall and I realize, hang on a second, all of these paintings have a gem in the two eyes of all of the people, except this one is missing a gem. There's a problem. Ooh, looks like a well-made video game. That's you. The problem lies in knowledge. You've noticed a problem. So what do? You turn it into a question. Where do I find the gem? Or for you, what is knowledge? Where do I find the gem? Because you know that if you find the gem, there's something significant when you put it in its right place. Something's going to happen in the game. So that's your question. What is knowledge? So in your notebook, have that as a question. And use the dialectic. That's learning. So what if it is? If it is, if it exists, if exists. Now existence is being, so you should also be learning about what being is, which is great, because that's literally what we're doing in the Meno. What is being? What is that which always exists? And if it doesn't? If it's just an opinion, if it's just a belief, if it's just an image, if it's just a prejudice. All of those are options for if it does not exist. Because beliefs and opinions and images and things in the physical world don't exist. They're not eternal. So everything that you discover, as you live, as you read, as you talk to people, as you have discussions with your friend over coffee, and when we say coffee, we have a sip of coffee. It's a fun thing that we do. Then every time you come across something that seems to fit in one of those categories, you take a note, and then when you get back to your note program, or maybe you've got it on your phone, belief goes in here. Or you might find something that goes in here. And then the more you learn the structure of the dialectic, you can take all of these terms. These are terms. So these are terms. And you can structure them. So these go into the structure. You structure them using what you are learning about the dialectic. That's the dialectic. This is what Socrates is telling Meno to do. Socrates is saying, look, we started with a question. For example, the one that we read today, what is shape? I used key terms. I talked about color. I talked about sense perception. I talked about planes and figures. Then I structured those terms in the dialectic to outline a definition, to outline a way of thinking, a way of understanding that come to a conclusion, a definition of what is shape. That is a paradigm, says Socrates. Use it, Meno. Use it to give a definition of what virtue is. And Meno said, oh, here's a quote from a poet that I like. And then we all face-palmed and we said, we made that noise. And then we all said, but that's okay. Meno is showing us what we are going to be if we don't play. So Socrates is talking to us. So Socrates is saying, hey, you guys do it. But just like over here, dialectic. Socrates isn't giving us someone who listens to him, because that would be unwise, unvirtuous. He's not giving us a Meno who listens, a Meno who is able to do this game. He's giving us what doesn't exist, so we can do the opposite, which is actually virtuous, which is fantastic, because one of the questions we've had while reading this, how come Meno isn't doing it well? How come he's more of a jerk? Like all these grifters and stuff that we see nowadays, these alpha red pill jerks and politicians who are just the most terrible people. Why is Meno like these people? Why can't he be more like us? Someone willing to do the game, play the game, be curious, to practice the dialectic, talk in this way. Well, we've got a kind of an answer, haven't we? Because he's doing this, whoops. Because he's not just giving us the answer. Because it's more just to give us what it isn't so we can do what it is. So, do that. Do you think knowledge needs an antithesis? What do you mean? Does knowledge need an antithesis to exist? The concept of knowledge is what I'm referring to. Right, so what do you mean by concept of knowledge? Don't you want to know what knowledge really is first, before you talk about whether or not it needs an antithesis to exist? Because that's what Meno is doing, right? He's saying, hey, the very start of this text, you'll love the Meno. I recommend you go back and you check out the other episodes we've got. You can find a link to our YouTube, and you can go back and go through it, because look at this thing here. The opening of this whole book, Meno says, hey, Socrates, can you tell me whether virtue is teachable? Or is virtue not teachable? Is virtue not teachable but acquired by practice? Or if it's neither by practice nor by learning, then does it come to human beings by their nature or in some other way? And then Socrates diagnoses him. Hey, by the way, I can see you're from this town and this culture, and you have this idea of wisdom, and you've got this family, and you've got this partner. So I can recognize your the causes of your false belief, by the way. But then he goes on to say, hang on a second. Shouldn't we know what it is first, before we talk about its qualities? Like, if there was someone who knew nothing at all about Meno, could this person know whether Meno is handsome or rich or noble, or the opposite? So same thing I would say to your question. Before you decide whether or not it's a learning thing or whether it needs an antithesis, wouldn't you first want to know what knowledge is before you start talking about what its qualities are? If you don't, what are you doing? If you know nothing about what Meno is, and then you start talking about whether or not he's handsome or rich or noble, what would you say you're doing? Same thing with Meno. Meno has shown he doesn't know what virtue is. So guys, hey, I know what virtue is. It's easy. The virtue of a man can be easily stated. He must be competent enough to manage the affairs of his city. And while managing those affairs, he should do good to his friends and bring harm to his enemies. And he must be careful never to suffer harm himself. But a woman's virtue is different. It's not difficult to describe. A woman's virtue is to be in the kitchen. To keep her household in good order. By being obedient to her man. This is garbage. It's trash. He thinks he knows. He doesn't know anything. Doesn't have any idea. None of that makes any sense. Right. So it could be an idea. So you might have another question. What does Socrates mean when he says an idea? Is an idea a concept? Because there's another word called eidos. Eidos means to behold. So when we're talking about the realm of being that we can experience, it's often called the metaphysics because it's before the physical world of space and time and that we perceive through our physical senses. If we are able to use the eye of the soul or separate from the physical senses or separate from the body, we can experience something called nous, which is the realm of being. Now you can distinguish qualities of it. Like its beauty itself. That's an eidos. That's not a concept. It's a way of intellectually understanding an aspect of something that really exists. Fantastic, yeah. And this is important because you might be using that in that philosophical sense that we're talking about. But for a lot of people who are like Meno, and they don't even know there is such a thing like being, they don't even know you can experience outside of your senses. They don't know there is such a thing like that. So when you say ideas to them, they'll think, oh, you mean an abstraction. Like when there's no such thing as beauty itself that exists and you can do a dialectic on and then experience. No. It's kind of like an abstraction. You see a beautiful thing with your eyes and another beautiful thing with your physical eyes, and then you create an abstract idea. That's what an idea is, an abstract concept. And it's less real. A beautiful person or a beautiful painting, that's more real than an abstraction. But we're saying the opposite. Saying, no. These beautiful things that you see with your senses share in the eidos of beauty itself. So they're adjectives. A beautiful puppy or a beautiful woman. They're adjectives. For there to be adjectives, there has to first be a noun. So for that reason, you might want to use the word eidos, because it specifically means those aspects of being. So it's not an abstraction, not a concept. And we do a lot of that as we read. Like the word dianoia is understanding, but it's not understanding of the physical world. So we don't have a word for that in English, so we have to learn a new language. But that's what we've been talking about today. Part of it is being open and curious, being okay with not knowing, being okay with being stung or puzzled or numb. But then in that numb, open, puzzled, curious state, developing a language. Dianoia, nous, eidos, logos, dialectic. Because those are the things we're going to be using as tools to solve those questions. So it's not like a koan where there's no answer. What is the sound of one hand clapping? There's no answer. It's a trick question. It's a nonsense question. These are questions you can get answers to, and you're supposed to. So you're saying, do I believe in a creator? I'm not interested in belief. We're interested in dianoia. which means because you can believe in anything, but who cares? I could say, yeah, what are you going to do? Oh, okay, shrug. All right. Or I'm going to fight you. Or if I say I don't believe in a God, you can say, well, you're going to go to hell. Who cares? Just beliefs on beliefs. We're doing something different. We're going beyond belief to a higher use of our mind here. So if you can have beliefs of the physical world, opinions, beliefs, prejudices, pathologos, fundamental false beliefs about yourself that cause your problems. But for us to be able to understand beliefs, understand what ones are false, how to free ourselves from false beliefs, we have to be operating from a higher cognitive function. That's understanding. So Socrates is able to recognize Meno's false beliefs because he's not functioning at the level of beliefs. He's functioning at the level of understanding. So understanding can be about beliefs because it's at a higher level. That's that quote from Einstein that we like. You can't solve problems at the same level of functioning that caused it. But we change that quote to say, you can't solve problems at the same cognitive functioning that caused it. So if your problems are caused by false beliefs, you can't solve them with more beliefs. So why go around asking what other people believe? Why not find someone who has understanding? Say, hey, can you help me understand my beliefs? And by the way, once I've freed myself from my false beliefs that I get from being a human being in the physical world, can I develop an understanding of being? And find these eidos that are always existing eternally? And can I use that understanding, which is called dianoia, of the realm of being to actually experience the realm of being for myself? Because then you can actually do something. Otherwise, beliefs are no good for anyone. Understanding you can use. You can use to purify yourself from your false beliefs or help others who have problems. And you can use your understanding to reach being. Yeah. So carry that question with you. So as you go, you have all these questions that you do dialectics on. So when you finally reach being, you can have this question, whether or not God exists. How are you going to answer that question? Well, meet him. How else are you going to find out? Meet the dude. If God is the name for that which is eternal and creates the physical world, has qualities like intelligence and power and justice and goodness, then you're talking about the realm of being. Now, because we get religious beliefs, you might not want to use the word God and use the word being or eternity or the divine instead. It's a way of sidestepping the beliefs that people get growing up in cultures with false beliefs. It might be helpful. Nevertheless, check it out for yourself. Right, so that's the game. So the question is, if he does exist, what if he does not? That's the dialectic. That's the method. If it is and if it isn't. So the terms that you use to do the dialectic on if he does exist, you get from reading Socrates, reading the Balboa translation of Socrates. That's what we're doing here. We're gaining the logos of what is. Now, the understanding of what follows if there isn't a divine, intelligent, caring reality, we get that from philosophical midwifery, which is the mastery of the logos and the dialectic applied to our false beliefs. So we do both. We have one nose in Plato and one nose in midwifery. But you're right, you need both. And so we can use that understanding to help us make sense of our friend Meno. Is he able to become puzzled and curious? Or is he too attached to this belief that he knows crap he doesn't, that he's not allowing himself to become curious, open, wondering, stung like a stingray, he said. You're like a stingray. I'm all out at sea and numb in the middle of the ocean, and I don't know what to do. And I hate it, because I think wisdom or knowledge is to have all the answers and be really confident and certain, like my teacher was, like my dad was, like my family friends was, like the king of Persia, whose family friends are, the rich guy. Just like us, right? You might know someone who has a belief that to be an alpha male or to be a knowing guy or to be an expert is to act like you know everything, and his dad's that way, and everyone in his church is that way, and his priest is that way, and his president is that way. This is an amazing understanding and seeing of human nature that Socrates has, that he's sharing with us. It's true today as exactly the same as it was true back then. It's amazing. And so one of the questions is Meno allowing himself to actually be stung? Because where we left off was, we saw that the last thing we read was, you seem to resemble one who does not know. But in the past translations of Socrates, you're as good as ignorant of it also. You're like me. So maybe Meno is lying. We don't know yet. But we take both. What if he is? What if he isn't? We take it as a question. We carry it with us. Because to carry a question is to be on a quest. That's playing the game. Meno once thinks, to be a philosopher is to have all the answers, right? Every YouTube philosophy video I'm presented with is some guy claiming to be a philosopher who struts around debating people, which doesn't help anyone, saying my beliefs are right because look how many books I've read. And he thinks he's claiming to know things. He doesn't even know what knowledge is, but he claims to know things. He thinks knowing is something to do with having opinions, talking like this.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
Whereas we are seeing, hey, it's seeking excellence. It's looking for questions, carrying them in our question sack, making hypotheses, carrying them in our if sack, looking for key terms, pushing the implications, looking for patterns, applying patterns, always using the dialectic, being a Sherlock Holmes person, looking for puzzles and clues in the Logos. This guy here, this guy here. Also recognizing that we are on our quest. This is for all of us. We are all philosophers. If you're in the game, you're on the hero's journey. If you're not, you're still doing a dialectic. You are just being like Meno. You're spending your life educating yourself that you are what isn't true. You're harming yourself. You're always in a relationship. You're always learning. You're always evolving. The problem is whether or not you're doing it on the Logos or the path of Logos. Can we be okay with being uncertain, with being puzzled, with having difficulties, being at a loss, being okay with embarrassment of not knowing, being perplexed? This is what we are learning about what it means to be a true philosopher. So the soul is eternal. Oh, that's a good question. Carry that one with you. Do animals have souls? Well, there are animals who can talk with buttons, like Bunny the talking dog. There are a bunch. There are like parrots that talk. So they are learning the Logos. We know that their consciousness is not as developed as ours. Right, yeah. Does it mean their souls of lesser version than ours? That's a good question. This is something that Socrates addressed in the Phaedo, which is what we read before the Meno. So you can check that out on the YouTube channel. He talked about, hey, by the way, if you are doing this game, you are able to, which is what? Mastering the art of the Logos and the Dialectic, on what is and what isn't, specifically of the self-logos and self-mind. Then, he calls this the education and nurture. You learn it, that's what we're doing, but you do it. Definition and demonstration. If you do it, you can purify yourself from your problems, escape fate, escape the chains of your problems and the prison of reincarnation. If you don't, then you're not doing your job. And based on how you live, which is not doing your job, not purifying yourself from the pathologos, not perfecting yourself to really discover what you are through the logos, through dianoia, through direct experience, through mastery of that direct experience, through using it to help people just like Socrates, you're not doing your job. So what's going to happen? That's going to affect your reincarnation. He outlines that in the Phaedo. So he talks about people who don't do this, master the logos. And he says some of them come back as donkeys, some of them come back as ants and bees. And of course, people who really embrace their problem, sometimes they don't come back at all, but stay stuck in a place that's terrible. By the way, if you do this, you have an opportunity to escape the cycles of reincarnation. You don't have to worry about coming back as an ant and then a dog and then finally working your way up to human again. And then hopefully reincarnating into a life where you meet a philosopher who tells you this. Hey, by the way, now that you know that there is an understandable, provable purpose, destiny for you, that's rational, nothing to do with opinions, but is understanding how to remove your false opinions, purify yourself from your problems, stop your problems, and this understandable and provable for yourself destiny is what you're here for. Now you know. You can't claim ignorance. Now you've heard it. If you're watching this, you've heard it. They call that within the structure of the hero's journey, they call that a call to adventure. Which is great. Lots of people never hear that. And now that you've heard it, you've got to develop courage. You've got to develop virtue. You got to figure out what virtue is, because you got to hold on to that when it's tough with courage, when you feel like losing your cool with temperance. You got to learn to master it as a dialectic with wisdom. And by the way, if you don't, maybe your next reincarnation is going to be worse. Maybe you'll forget even more. Maybe your pathologos will be even worse. Maybe you'll even become a donkey or something worse. So there are stakes to this. Often we talk about the stakes of humanity. Like, how are we going to stop genocide if we don't learn to understand the truth about why genocide is wrong? And that's not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of belief, but always, always, always true, provably true. And if we're not learning how to master the art of the dialectic on what causes the false beliefs that some people are better than others and some people deserve to be murdered, how are we going to purify our problems? We can't. We're stuck. The next level of human development is into the logos. We're at that level of group think, where pathologos lies. If we don't master the art of the dialectic, if we don't learn the logos, that's it for humans. That's not my opinion, that's just the fact of the dialectic and the logos. So there are stakes to this, it's important. But also, more important even than that is your soul. There are stakes to how you live. There's a consequence to whether or not you master true virtue, which is why we read the Meno, and you do it. You master the art of the dialectic. There's stakes. There's all of the great things you can reach when you reach being, when you climb this ladder of the Logos. So sometimes we represent it as a ladder. Where's a ladder? Here we go. There are good things if you climb this ladder of the Logos. So one rail is understanding, the other rail is states of mind. So today we've been talking about the state of mind of aporia, being stung, being puzzled. You have to have that, but also you have to have understanding, because once you find the puzzles, you got to develop how to read so you can actually understand and answer them. That's climbing the ladder of the Logos. That's the way of the dialectician. Well, the stakes are you can reach goodness itself. You can reach your destiny. And you can go beyond goodness to the good and reach the self. These are great stakes. But then there are also stakes if you don't do it. If we have a destiny, we also have a fate. Our failures. If our destinies is our good, then fate is our failure. Stuck in vice. The shadow of the Logos. So while the Logos is a ladder, it casts a shadow that looks like a railway tracks. You're stuck there. Which has implications to your suffering. So we could go back and say, hey, by the way, Buddha, you know how you want to get rid of suffering? There you go. It's called purification. Socrates laid it out for us. Pierre Grimes mastered it in this book here. Your suffering is caused by your path of Logos, which you need to have so that you have a stakes motivation to master the art of the Logos and the dialectic, to purify your path of Logos and gain a mastery of the Logos. That's the way of the dialectician. So Buddha, you want to remove suffering? There you go. There's your spiritual discipline, the way of the dialectician. In the chat, are there only ideas for positive things like knowledge and beauty? That's a fantastic question. Write that down somewhere. Put it in your question sack. As we read, wonder about that question. By the way, what will it do if you did? If you were reading and you had that question, every time I hear Socrates or Meno talk about a positive thing, I wonder if they're talking about something that exists in being. And I wonder if whenever they talk about being, I wonder if they ever mention any negative things. What will that do to your reading? Notice, it's not a question that some guru like a Buddhist or a Taoist guru gave you. Like, what is the sound of, what is moo? Or if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? This is your question. Is that significant? Is carrying it while you read significant? What will it do to your reading? Will it turn it from being a dry text to something with a bit more interest? If you carry a question like that, are you on a quest? Are you putting on your this guy here, Sherlock Holmes hat? It's a good one. Right, so the golden rule is again lacks the Logos. We don't care about pushing beliefs onto people. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. No, screw that. I don't want people to do to me what they want done to them. No freaking way. I want people to do unto me what I want done to me. No, I don't even want that. I want the Logos. I want people to act towards me in a way that reflects the Logos, that benefits. What's that called? Art. You go to a doctor and say, hey, give me the prescription that I would give you. Whoa, no. How about use your mastery of the art of medicine to act towards me in a way that most benefits me. By the way, we don't have to put this in a holy book and say, God says so, and if you don't do it, you're going to go to hell, because no one's going to do that anyway. There are people who claim to be Christians. They don't do anything that's in the book. They just follow their path of Logos. That's why they're called hypocrites. But if it was an understanding of what actually benefits, maybe we would have a reason to do it. And by the way, if we can understand it, we will also be able to understand the deviations from it. Just like a doctor. If you understand the healthy body, you can recognize deviations. If someone comes into your office and they're missing their left arm, you go, well, actually, I have the model of a healthy body, and I can recognize you're deviating from that. You're missing an arm. You should have two. You've only got one. See, you need that. Yeah, but that's I mean, you can think about that, and you say, well, what if some people like, yeah, well, I don't care, I'm going to steal from you because I would like to be stolen from if I was as rich as you. Again, you're appealing to beliefs. What if you met a crazy person who likes to harm people, like a masochist or a sadist? Would you want him to harm you because he likes the pain? How about something different? How about there is an understanding that's, yeah, sure. So you're saying everybody who doesn't have your opinion about what's good, they have mental health problems. But then maybe your opinion's wrong. How do you know your opinions about what would be benefit? Hey, Meno says, what I would do is, if I had wisdom, I would just give you the answers. So the golden rule, says Meno, I think being wise is giving answers in a very confident style. So hey, you should treat me in the way I want to be treated. But what did Socrates say? No, I don't care what you want. You can shove your golden rule. I'm not going to do something that's bad for you just because you want it. Children want to eat Fruit Loops all day. Demanding answers. So what we're doing instead of like saying what beliefs do you like or not like, and demand people agree with us, we are recognizing we don't know the truth. We don't know being. We don't know the principles of what actually is the best for our soul. Because what's the best for our soul? Virtue. That's the question on the table. What is virtue? How do you know the best for your soul? We've already read, Meno thinks it's harming your enemies, making women be obedient to their husbands, thinking slavery is good. Sounds like a right-wing fascist, sexist, fascist Trump supporter. Just because he believes it doesn't mean it's true. And it could be harming his soul. So this takes us all the way back to... So what would be the true education? The Logos. That's it. Says Socrates. And that's what we're learning. Oh, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for your questions. I hope you carry your questions with you as you continue to read. Now, we were saying, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? Because some people are going all the way back. Some people are bad faith actors. And we discovered that Meno said, well, what if I have this old idea of wisdom to be certain about my beliefs? And I said, well, actually, I win the debate because you didn't give me a good definition because I don't know what color means. Socrates said, look, if you're that kind of person, someone who just likes to antagonize and use words to debate, and you call yourself wise, I would say, I've already stated it correctly. It's your task, it's your work to take up the Logos and refute me. But if we were friends, I would do something different. If you were genuine, if you weren't one of these right-wing grifting dickheads, I don't know, what would you call them? Cancers of society. Terribly ignorant people who are harming everyone, including themselves. Sick people. Again, not an opinion. Literally, they have a sick belief that's causing them to function in a way that's unjust and poisons humanity. Willfully manipulating people to think and act against their own interests. So then we saw, hang on a second, friends and wisdom. So now we realize, oh, there's a question here. So what's our question? What is wisdom? Well, we know what it's not. What is friendship? So let's read on. So let's practice this. So we have some questions on the table. What is wisdom? What is friendship? What is the self? What is knowledge? These are questions that have come from our reflection with our friends in chat. And also the question, what is virtue, from the text too. So with these questions in mind, let's see how it affects our reading. Whereas on the other hand, says Socrates, if we were friends, what is friends? And we chose to be dialecticing with each other, just as you and I are now doing, then I must reply in a more gentle way, and more in the way of the dialectician. Thus, a more dialectical way is not only to answer the truth, but equally to also proceed by means of those premises which the one who is questioning acknowledges they know. If you acknowledge you know them, you proceed with those as premises. You can't say, oh, I don't know what that word means, if you acknowledge you do. And surely in this way, I will endeavor to converse with you. Now, do you call something an end a boundary? Okay, so then he goes on to the dialectic on shape. So here we have some clues. Gentle way. Discourse. Dialect, so that's different than dialectic here. Dialegiothai. So discourse, communication, keeping the conversation going. The way of the dialectician, a gentler way. A dialectical way. To tell the truth. But to proceed in a kind of manner based on premises. Making sure the person you're talking with acknowledges they know those premises. So no gish galloping, no using technical words that are over people's heads, like this guy.
Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Nagel? What about Scanlon? Have you read Scanlon or Scruton or Edmund Burke? Have you read C.S. Lewis? Have you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Have you read Immanuel Kant? So you know Flicht.
What has this got to do with Bob's Burgers?
Do you practice self-love in a Kantian sense? Do you masturbate to Kant? Have you seen Infinity Wars? Have you even seen Age of Ultron?
So that kind of appeal to words that are over people's heads or text that I don't know, that's not friendly, that's not gentle, that's not true conversation, that's not the way of the dialectic. So you ask them, hey, are you with me on this? So I haven't been a good example of that today because it's difficult over chat, but if we were talking face to face or if there was a better medium, we would be able to practice this over coffee. Do you agree with this? What about this? What about this? While telling the truth and being gentle. Very different than how we approach bad faith actors who try to take advantage of this virtue, maybe friendship, but they're really con artists and grifters. So does this help us figure out what it means to be a friend? The way of the dialectic, gentle, discourse, truth, premise. Like when we were talking about sin before, I didn't mince words, I just told the truth. Now, in polite society, we go, oh, that's an interesting, you believe in sin. Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, isn't that lovely? No, I told the truth. Again, difficult on chat, but try to ask questions. Hey, by the way, if you're an archer and you missed the mark, would you believe you're going to hell? Or would you just correct your aim? So, is that what it means to be a friend? So, taking that and what it means to be a bad faith actor, to play dumb or pretend you don't know things, or to go back on what you said before because you didn't like the conclusion. What is Meno doing? Because here he says, hey, you've shown my belief about virtue didn't hold mustard at all, was wrong. You keep encouraging me to use this paradigm of the dialectic to actually think properly and define properly, but I don't know how to do that, and I don't know what to say. And I don't like that because I've made very good speeches about virtue in front of a lot of people. I like to cosplay the knower. I like to think I know stuff. I don't like you showing that I don't know. So what am I going to do instead? I'm going to call you a flathead, stingray of the sea. I'm going to say that you drugged me and enchanted me and you're a sorcerer. And if you go out of Athens, they'll get you. So you better be careful, son. I'm going to attack you and threaten you and mock you. Talk about your appearance. Is he being a friend? Is he holding on to the conclusions that they've come to together? That he doesn't know what virtue is, he doesn't know how to understand, he's not using the paradigm right? Or is he pretending? Is he playing dumb? In other words, hey, and by the way, if Socrates' response to this is, hey, don't worry, man. It's okay to be stung. I'm more stung than you. And Socrates' response to Meno was, hey, you seem to resemble one who doesn't know like me. Is Socrates saying, hey, I'm not buying it? You're one of those bad faith actors? Stop pretending. Allow yourself to not know. Let go of that idea of yourself. Because it's false. It's not the truth. And use our conclusions and push the implications, roll it forward. But nevertheless, I am willing to consider and to search along with you for what in the world it is. So what's he doing? He's telling the truth. But he's also encouraging him and inviting him into a new way of being that can be difficult for people to get into. And it's just simply being okay with not knowing. Our culture, our society, our families, our institutions, most of them, if not all of them, are built on this premise that, hey, we all don't know, but the people who get to be in charge are people who can bullshit the hardest. They get the jobs on the networks, TV networks. They can convince the people on the internet to subscribe to their courses. They have the alpha male red pill podcasts. They get to be politicians. They get to have the guns. They get to have the money. Hey, you seen Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos? Do they know anything? No. They act like they do. They surround themselves with sycophants who pretend that they do. They go on Joe Rogan and put on an act. So if these are the people who are getting rewarded, the most ignorant and the biggest liars are the ones who get rewarded. By the way, Meno's family, Meno's teacher, how difficult would it be to accept Socrates' invitation to be something different and better, but different? To sacrifice these material things that are all built on lies and bullshit, to sacrifice that for truth. For learning. And for initiation into the mystical. That none of those people allow. His teacher doesn't allow that, or can't allow that, because it's beyond opinions. Literally, you have to, as we've been talking about today, understand and sacrifice the false opinions because they're inconsistent with the true experience of reality. But hang on a second, what about all the gold and silver and all these people who think virtue is harming your enemies? I want to be the one with all the power so I can harm my enemies and not be the one being harmed. While also telling my wife what to do and telling women what to do and having slaves. I want to be a fascist and a tyrant. Right? All the poor people who vote for Trump? Is it because they secretly want to be a fascist tyrant just like him? What's the expression? The reason we don't rebel against capitalism because we don't consider ourselves poor, we consider ourselves temporarily embarrassed millionaires? In other words, people fantasize about being the tyrant themselves. So what? So we have a question. How well does Meno accept this invitation? How able is he to sacrifice all of those physical things, gold, silver, honors, status within a family, status within a city, maybe even his boyfriend or partner, whoever it was? How willing is he able to let go of all of those things that keep his ignorance and his lies and his falsehood alive, to adopt a new way of being that we're calling true friendship, or the way of the dialectician? And can we do even better? Can we be even more excellent than Meno, however well he does? And can we learn from Socrates? He's telling the truth. He's not buying into his lies. Yeah, you're pretending to be someone who knows. I can see it. But I'm telling you, it's okay to not know. Drop this act. And by the way, let's go together. I'm here with you, buddy. I'm not casting you out. I'm not going to genocide you. I'm not going to do what's Trump promising, mass deportations. I'm not going to deport you. I'm not going to exile you. I'm not going to genocide you. That's what's happening now. I'm going to search along with you for what in the world it is. The what in the world is an expression. I'm going to search along with you, equally puzzled, equally curious, equally open, equally okay with not knowing. We're going to go together and search for what it is. Is that true friendship? Is that true wisdom? Is that true virtue? On those questions, I hope to see you next time. I hope you've got something out of this podcast. I hope you've got questions and definitely not answers. But and thank you for joining us in chat. Thank you for the new chatters. Be sure to follow along on Twitch, or if you're not on Twitch, on YouTube. You can join us live and interact and ask questions, or you can find all of our episodes on the YouTube channel that you can check out at your leisure. You can also subscribe to or join the Discord if you want notifications when we go live, or if you want to have conversations and chat and meet people. Maybe even organize face-to-face meetups to practice the dialectic with people. You're welcome to do that on Discord. So thank you once again for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.